like to just talk about this book. I received this a few weeks ago when I did my instructor's course with Crochet Guild Australia, and this was given as a gift to all the participants, all the students there. Learn to Crochet. It's a patterns book, and I was surprised that this one has been updated because I actually have this book, and I want to say I got it back in 2008 because that's when I was sort of transitioning from cross stitch, which I've been doing for about 20 years, back into crochet again. And like a lot of the ladies that were at the class, a lot of us did learn from our mothers and our grandmothers. And I myself never really learned to read a pattern. I think I've talked about that in one of my previous videos. I never really learned to read a pattern. I would just look at some crochet pieces, and I learned the basic stitches. So in the US terminology, like your chain stitch, single crochet, half double, double, treble, those 4 stitches. And then unless, our mothers or aunties or grandmothers were particularly good at reading patterns, we never got the opportunity to read patterns. We just made granny square blankets, and that was almost all that we made back then. So back in 2008, I went back into the crochet journey, and so I bought myself this book. This is the one that I had, so it's very similar. Learn to Crochet, All You Need to Know guidebook by Patons. And so I was really excited to get this updated version. It's a lot thicker, it's got a lot more things in it, and some really up-to-date, nice projects. So when I bought this book, I basically went from the beginning to the end. I did every project in it. And the reason that I loved it, and you'll see, can't show you everything in there, but maybe I can just show you this page of what's included. You can get this updated book from Spotlight here in Australia. I saw it there this week. You can also get it from Crochet Australia online. If you live on the Sunshine Coast, you can go to Crochet Australia, and I know that Linda sells that book there. She was one of our instructors, and she told me that you can purchase that book with her. And I think it is a little bit cheaper than buying it at Spotlight, so it might be worthwhile getting online. Although Spotlight sometimes has sales. I did buy another crochet book that I'd been looking at for a while last week, and it was a bit pricey, but when I went back this week to get some more yarn for one of my projects, I saw that it had been marked down at 50% off, so I did buy it. So maybe this one, if you get it on a sale, you might actually get it for a really good price too. So yeah, so the book actually goes through everything there is to know about learning to crochet. So maybe if I show you from the newer book, because that's the one that you're going to be getting. I highly recommend this book. So it goes through all the basics, from how to identify different yarns, how to read a ball band, all the tools that you'll need following a pattern, how to read charts and diagrams, how to measure tension. Then it'll start with how to hold your hook, how to hold the yarn, slip knot, chain, all the different stitches that you can go through. And then it gives you basic beginner patterns, easy patterns of things that you can make, right up to the more advanced patterns at the back. And then also one thing that I did like, which was right at the back, was was it this book that I looked at? Maybe it wasn't. No, it wasn't this one. All right, it might have been somewhere else. I saw a conversion chart from UK to US terminology. I think it's important to have that for anyone that's learning to crochet. Get to familiarise yourself with the different crochet terms. Here in Australia, we use the UK terminology, which is chain, double crochet, half treble, treble, double treble. I myself learnt the US terminology. My mother and auntie were from Europe, and I think that's the terminology they learnt. So I use those ones, which is chain, single crochet, half double, double, treble. So it can be a bit confusing, and I know it is when I'm teaching my crochet class here at home on a Monday. One of the ladies has always used the Australian UK terminology. So when I'm talking about making a double crochet, she's thinking of the US single crochet. I'm talking about the US single crochet, she's thinking of the double crochet, which, oh, sorry, start again. She used the UK Aussie terminology, and so when I'm talking to the girls about making a double crochet, she's thinking of the UK double crochet as the US single crochet, and so that in the UK terms that would then be a treble crochet. For me, a treble crochet in the US terminology is you're winding the yarn around twice. Anyway, yeah, that's a bit confusing how I explained that. It's just good to get the basic conversion, because if you're going to purchase patterns, if you see a pattern, you might see a pattern on Ravelry or Pinterest or somewhere, YouTube even, just make sure you find out what terminology they're using, and if it's the one that you've learnt, because you can come undone if they're talking about a double crochet and they're actually meaning a single crochet in the US terminology, and vice versa. So yeah, just a little bit about that book, Learn to Crochet book. I think it's a really good resource to have. And yeah, if you're a reading learner, you like to read and have patterns in front of you, hard copy, this is a great book to learn from. But I will be using some of the techniques in here to make some of my tutorials. One of the first things we want to learn about when we're starting to knit or crochet is about the yarn, and specifically how to read a ball band. So when you're following a pattern and the pattern is telling you to get an 8-ply or a 12-ply, a DK weight, fingering weight, what does that mean? What do those terms mean, and how do I know which yarn to buy when I'm going shopping to get the things that I need, the supplies that I need and the yarn that I need and the right hook and everything like that. All right, so let's have a look at two brands here. So this one, these are both from Spotlight. This one is Annette Erickson Eco Cotton, and this one is a Payton's brand, acrylic wool blend. All right, so we'll start with the Australian brand. This is a Payton brand. And so we're going to have a look at the different parts of a ball band that you want to look for, okay? So let's say, for example, you're making a pattern for a blanket. You're following a pattern that you saw on YouTube, maybe, or you've got a pattern, a printed pattern, and it's telling you to buy an 8-ply yarn. Now, the pattern that you see may be from another country. It may not be from here in Australia. And maybe it's telling you you need fingering weight yarn, or you need sport weight yarn, or it's using different terms than plies. Here in Australia, we use the ply system. All right. You might be following an Australian pattern and you're from the US or from somewhere else. And so you're asking the question, what does ply mean? Okay, so let's find out all about that. So the first thing that we've got here is the brand name. Payton's is a very well-known Australian brand that's been around for over 100 years. So this particular yarn is called Sierra. That's the type of yarn that I'm using today, or not the brand, but the, what do we want to call it? The yarn name, okay? Payton's is the brand, Sierra is the yarn name. So there's Payton's Jet, there's Payton's, there's Fairhaven, there's different Payton's types of yarn that you can get. So this one is called Sierra, and it's an 8-ply. All right, so all yarn will tell you the brand name, the type of yarn it is, so you can find it online, and then what thickness the yarn is. All right, so when we're talking about plies, it used to be 8 plies or 8 strands wound together when it was spun. But ply can also refer to just the thickness or the grade of yarn. In the US, they use different terminology for that. So just to give you an idea, some of the yarn weight equivalents. Here in Australia, we call a 2-ply a lace, and in the US, they would use the term lace weight. 3-ply is fingering weight. 4-ply is a sock yarn. 5-ply is a sports weight. And 8-ply, like this one, is what they called DK or double knitting weight in the US. 10-ply is your Aran weight, 12-ply is your worsted weight, 14-ply is chunky, and 16 weight is bulky. So that's the equivalent. You can find yarn weight tables online. It's a good idea to print yourself one out unless you've got a book that has those equivalents in it. So if you're making a pattern from different countries, you can find the yarn that you need So then you can, if somebody says use a DK weight on the pattern, and you're here in Australia, what's a DK weight? Have a look up your table. Oh yeah, that's an 8 ply. So when I go shopping for yarn, I know this is the one that I need, an 8 ply. All right, then the next thing that it's going to show us on the ball band is what the yarn is composed of, what it's made of. So this one is 80% acrylic, 20% wool. Okay, so depending on the project that you're making, you might want to use acrylic yarn, 100% acrylic yarn. You might want to use 100% wool. You might be allergic to wool, so you'll want, only acrylic. Or you can use a composition as well. There's also cotton, there's many other fibres, alpaca, silk, mohair, there's, cashmere, what's the bunny one called? Is it cashmere? No. Anyway, yeah, there's all the different types of yarn compositions that you can get. And Spotlight and many other of the big brand craft stores have a lot of them. All right, and then it will tell you where that yarn is made. So this one here, Australian Yarn Company of Patons, is in Bendigo, Australia. We'll then give you the links to their social media or their websites. All right, and then it will also give you a colour. So sometimes it will have a colour name. This one's got a colour number, and it will give you a lot number or a dye lot. Okay, so if you're making, particularly if you're making garments, I know for knitting, this is, what I learnt many years ago when Mum used to knit, you need to get wool that is in the same dye lot. So if a pattern is telling you to get 12 balls or 8 balls of the same colour, do that, because the next lot that they dye could be slightly different. And then when you're knitting up a cardigan or a jumper, or you're crocheting a garment and you have a different dye lot, you might start to see a slightly different shade through your garment. So it's a good idea to get always the same dye lot. All right, then the other thing that the ball band will mention is your washing instructions. So even though this is an Australian company, it's actually saying here that it's made in India. So there you go. Gentle machine wash or hand wash. Do not bleach. Rinse well. Normal spin dry. Do not tumble dry. Dry flat in the shade if it's a blanket or a garment. Cool iron and dry cleanable. So that's your washing instructions there. All right. And then it's going to give you the size of hook or knitting needle that you need to use when you're making something with this yarn. All right, so in this case, this 8 ply Sierra uses a 4mm crochet hook or a 4mm knitting needle. It's also giving us the UK and US sizes there. So UK size 8 hook or needle, US size 6. All right, many ball bands that I've noticed here in Australia will only give you the knitting needle size. It won't have a crochet hook on it, but usually I just follow the knitting needle size. So if it's saying 4mm needles, I will use the 4mm crochet hook if I'm crocheting something. Then it will give you a stitch gauge of how many stitches and how many rows will make up a 10 by 10 centimetre swatch. All right, so some patterns will tell you, particularly if you're making a garment, you want to make it a particular size that's going to fit. They will ask you to make a swatch, 10 by 10 centimetre swatch, or that's like maybe 3 by 3 inch swatch, so that you can work out how many stitches fit into that 10 centimetres and how many rows make up that 10 centimetres. And that's important because if your gauge is different, you might make 25 stitches for 10 centimetres, or you might only make 20 stitches for 10 centimetres. So over a whole garment, that can make a big difference in the size that your garment's going to be, because perhaps you crochet looser or tighter than the person who made that pattern. So it is important to make a little gauge swatch, make sure that your stitches are the same as what's on the pattern. If it's not, if you're finding that your gauge is slightly looser, you can use a smaller hook, and that will bring down your gauge so that it will fit into the 22 stitches for the 10 by 10 centimetres. or whatever gauge they're telling you to do. If your swatch is a lot smaller than 10 centimetres, that is, you need a lot more stitches to make 10 centimetres, you may need a bigger crochet hook. So even though it's telling you to use a 4mm hook, you may need a smaller or a bigger crochet hook to obtain the right gauge for that garment that you're following that pattern for. Okay, for blankets, it's not so crucial. I don't usually make a gauge swatch for a blanket. I just don't need to, because I just know in my mind what size I want to make the blanket. I'll just crochet a whole lot of chains and then measure it over my lap and think, okay, I want this to be a lap blanket. This is how big I want it to be. Or I will make, if it's in the round, I'll just, like a granny square blanket, starting in the middle and going out and out. I will just keep crocheting more and more rows until it's big enough and I'm happy with the size. So I don't really need to make a gauge swatch. You may want to, and perhaps the pattern, depending on what it is, will tell you to make one. But it's very, very important when you're making garments to a particular size. So always follow the pattern designer's recommendations. That's important. Okay, the other thing is the meterage. Okay, so this one, is it giving me a meterage? Oh yes, so 150 grams is 375 meters. All right, or that may be yards if it's from another country. So you may have a pattern that is telling you to use 1,000 meters. All right, so then you might wonder, well, how many of these balls do I need? So if this one is 375, then probably 3 of them is just around 1,000 meters. So I'd probably need 3 of these balls for a particular pattern that's asking for that many meters. So it's not always a good idea to go just by the grams, because it can be, what composes this yarn, an 8-ply 150 gram. 150 gram is the weight of it, but it may not be the length of how much is in this ball. And so your blanket or your garment could be smaller or bigger for the 150 grams. So yeah, it's not just about the weight. You do have to go by the yardage or the meterage. All right. And again, use a conversion chart for how many yards or how many meters, depending on the pattern. All right, so that's an Australian one that's made in India. Okay, I don't really understand how that happens, but maybe they got the actual wool from India and dyed it here and spun it here, I'm not sure. Or the other way around, I'm not really sure. So anyway, this one, Annette Erickson Eco Cotton. I've been using this to make my Chunky Benji bears that you may have seen. This is a 200 gram ball. It's an Eco Cotton, so it's 100% cotton. This is the colour. See, there's the colour there, 133 Eucalyptus, dye lot 2408. So if I grab another one off the shelf, I think I have another one. Let me see if it's the same dye lot. Yes, it is. Lot 2408. And I've got another colour. Yeah, the other colours are the same dye lot as well. So I don't really have any that are different dye lot. I usually try to get the same dye lot when I am shopping. Sometimes by accident I don't check, and then I may get something different. So yeah, colour Eucalyptus, dye lot is 2408. And then we have the other information here. This one is 85% cotton, 15% polyester, made in Turkey. So it's even telling you here, as a result of recycled textiles, dye lots may vary. Okay, so you can go slightly darker or lighter if it's a different dye lot. It's machine washable. Meterage per ball is 220 meters. All right, so notice that. That one was 150 gram. This one is 200 gram. This one is, for 150 gram, you're getting 375 meters. And here you've got a 200 gram ball. It's still 8-ply, but it's telling you it's only 220 meters. So depending on your pattern, you really do have to watch that information so that you get enough yarn, because next time, if you run out and next time you go, you may get a different dye lot. It can affect how your garment or your crochet piece is going to work. This one is telling you to use a 6mm needle size. All right, so then I would probably use a 6mm hook, although my Chunky Benji pattern tells me to use a 4mm hook, so that's what I've been using, 4 or 4.5. But I definitely have not been using a 6mm, the Chunky Benji Bear. I've been using a 4.5 or 4mm hook for my bears. All right, here we have tension 14 stitches and 17 rows, makes a 10 by 10 centimetre swatch. See how that differed there? 10 by 10 centimetre here was 22 stitches by 30 rows. 10 by 10 centimetre on this one is only 14 stitches by 17 rows. So you can have 2 8-ply yarns. One is cotton, one is acrylic wool. Your tension can be completely different and the hook size can be completely different, and the meterage per ball is different. So it is important to take note of those details. All right, anything else I missed on this one? Dial-up number, we talked about that. Yeah, I think that's all. Okay, so that's how you can read the ball band when you go shopping. So let's have a look at a pattern now. I'm going to pick a pattern that I've got here. I can't show it to you because it's a bought one, but I'll tell you what it's telling me to get. All right, so it's telling me the yarn required is 50-gram balls. All right, so now if I were to get 50-gram balls, it's telling me the main colour I need 12 50-gram balls. Okay, so I might think to myself, okay, well, this is 150 gram. So this makes up 3 balls. All right, but then the yarn that they've used could be a completely different type of 8-ply yarn. So I really need to look at the meterage like we talked about. How many meters do I need? Not just a 50-gram ball, but how many meters of yarn do I need? All right, so does that make sense? All right, and then this pattern also tells me it's an 8-ply yarn and I need a 7mm crochet hook. So again, that can be completely different depending on the weight. So that's a little bit about ball bands and how to read them when you go shopping. Just check those things, okay? Check your meterage, check what it's made of, check your hook size if you're crocheting, and yeah, double check that with your pattern as to how much you need, how much yarn you need, and also what is it composed of. Is it wool? Is it cotton? Is it polyester? What is it made of? What do you want your item to be made of? My Chunky Benji, I wanted to make them out of cotton, and this was a good equivalent of the pattern that I saw. It was the nice thickness. It was sturdy. I thought he would make a nice bear. I could make a Chunky Benji out of this one too. I might even do that in the future, make a colourful bear, but I wanted them to be the cotton. So thank you for watching today, and I hope that helps you a little bit when you have to go shopping for your yarn. It can be a little bit daunting if you're just a beginner crocheter or knitter even, to know what yarn do I buy, especially when you go to one of the big stores and there's so much selection there. So I hope that helps you. Thank you for watching today and for coming back. If you're a returning viewer, please leave a comment, like my video if you do like it, and subscribe. And I look forward to chatting with you again next time. Bye for now.